Tonight on the Goblins Corner.
Custom Fey.
That's how we roll. 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 That's how we roll.
Welcome to the Goblins Corner. My name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And tonight,
We're doing Custom Fey.
yeah, just in time for St. Patty's Day, we got a little Custom Fey action for you and your TTRPG of choice.
Indeed.
And we feel that because it is the St. Patrick's Day week, you should probably be drinking while you watch this episode.
Yes.
I certainly am, or have been.
I have
Matt's got a drink outside the
frame of the
outside
camera.
the frame of the camera. It was fine too, you know. Just
I have no knowledge of that, Senator.
yeah, and we're not saying that it needs to be an alcoholic beverage, but if it is,
No harm.
no, we're not judging.
Right.
Right. So we've got a lot of really interesting custom Fey and show you how to make some and how to reuse, maybe put a little spin on some old Fey, so to speak. We've even got some Archfey.
Yes.
But before we get to all of that,
Got a question of the week, man.
all right, hit me up. What we got?
Since we're talking about Fey,
It's going to be a Fey question?
it is.
Oh, my. Tell me then.
What would you offer in trade for a Fey Pact? Or what would you accept in trade if you could offer to make a pact?
Okay. I got an answer for if I were to trade for a patron.
Mm-hmm.
I would give up one of two things. I would trade what someone would qualify as dad jokes to
Okay.
be ripped from my brain permanently. And most people consider those to be the really punish,
Sure.
ridiculous dad jokes. I would also trade the 7 years of IT support that I worked to be ripped from my brain because those are painful memories anyway, and I'm perfectly happy to lose those.
Okay. Okay.
Now, if I were taking something, being the type of Fey that I would be,
Mm-hmm.
I would say you must pay me with bags of stolen candy. But they have to be stolen bags of candy.
Yeah.
And then I would grant you your dark powers from my mischievous abilities.
Fair. Fair.
Because that would amuse me.
Absolutely.
Also, party hats of all sorts. Pay me in party hats.
Sure.
And then I would turn into a giant frog with a mallet and say, "Ha-ha, suckers, I'm actually a slod." Bash them over the head.
And they wouldn't care.
And they wouldn't care at that point, right? Because it'd be delightful. They're like, "Oh, he got me."
But I still have my powers, so
Yeah.
who cares?
That's right. End it with the aristocrats. So that would be my answer. What would your two answers be? So one, if you were to give something to a patron, and then one, if you were to take something as a patron.
I would trade my arthritis for my powers.
That's a good idea.
It's a double win for me, but it would allow my patron to curse somebody with my arthritis since they own it.
That's a good point. Yeah, I like that.
And that is exactly how I would sell it.
That's a lot better than mine. Although I don't really like dad jokes, so I'd be fine with
Yeah,
losing
and
that.
you don't have arthritis either.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, yeah. All right. Now, if you were a patron, what would you do?
What would I accept?
Yeah, what would you accept?
I think mostly I would accept vows to do good in the world.
That's nice.
Because the fact of the matter is at that point in time, like, I know you can't abuse your powers.
Oh, that's a good point because you'd have to do good.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of you doing good in the world. I like the idea of other people doing good because it can't get out of the bargain.
Right.
That's way amusing to me. It's like, haha, you've been tricked into doing good, sucker. Are you a do-gooder? Or perhaps you're a sucker? Write to us. info@goblinscorner.com, or you can reach me, Eric@goblinscorner.com, or...
Me, Matt at goblinscorner.com.
And of course, you can find us on all the things,
Indeed.
such as Instagram,
And mostly Twitter.
and mostly Twitter. Yeah.
And our Discord.
And our Discord. We've been really chatty on the Discord lately. And thank you, folks, for chatting on the Discord with us.
Indeed.
We get lonely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Custom Fey tonight. What is involved in talking about Custom Fey? Why are we even talking about Custom Fey? Do we need more Fey in the world?
I think you know what the first answer is.
Absolutely yes.
Yes. I need more. I need
Matt
more.
wants more Fey. And
Yes.
it's really mostly Matt wants more.
Yes. There needs to be more.
And, you know, the Feywild book came out.
Right. And it went some small direction to providing more Feywild and Fey options. But the fact of the matter is, it was written as an adventure, not as a campaign book.
Yeah, it wasn't a source book.
Right.
A lot of fun stuff in there.
It's awesome. It's just not what I want.
It's not dark Fey. Because I want a little bit of maliciousness to my Fey.
Absolutely.
A little bargaining, perhaps. Some dark bargains. I mean, you got to have some of that.
Yeah, it's just not what type of Fey I would be.
Yeah. So we felt that adding a little bit more oomph to that would be great. And it would be great for storylines, for player characters, maybe, or even, of course, the handy DM that wants to throw something from the Feywild and, mix it up. Maybe everyone's read those books and they think, I know what he's going to throw at me. Wrong. Yeah. Tricked you there. Threw the rug out from under you. Brained you over the head. Just like my Slod Lord. Aha, aristocrats. All right. Stop doing that joke.
Somebody's going to look up that joke.
Someone will look up that joke.
And it's going to go real sideways.
It's not a great joke. Although, watch the documentary. The documentary is awesome.
It's a great joke. It's awful.
It is an awful joke. It is an awesome documentary. So, in addition to that, who are the Archfey, Matt? Because we're going to talk to you about making Archfey as well.
Yes, because we literally get no examples.
Yeah.
None.
Mysterious, very, I would say, godlike, powerful creatures. And we're going to tell you how to make one.
Yep.
Also,
many Fey fail to tap into what I feel like, and what we feel like, are some of the themes of the old fairy tales, like amorality.
Mm-hmm.
You've got good Fey and you've got bad Fey, but what a lot of D&D Fey and a lot of RPG Fey in general don't touch on is the fact that Fey live in the moment. They don't have morals.
Yeah, they're
not good or evil. They just are.
They're just whimsical.
Right. They're very mercurial. And certain Fey are very much attached to specific emotions.
Mm-hmm. Love, hate, rage, jealousy, whatever that happens to be. They're also tied a lot to terrain, and environment, and nature, which we'll get to in a moment or so. But
like a lot of people don't realize that the Banshee is the Banshee. It was a Fey before it was an undead. So, yeah. And obviously it's about mourning and loss, and that's its primary motivator. So yeah, I just feel like a lot of that stuff kind of got lost in the monster manual, or just didn't get around to getting represented.
That makes sense. And of course, as we always like storytelling, and we predominantly go with storytelling in this podcast anyway, more flavor for your game, right? We're always about that more flavor. So we're going to get a little bit of that. Now, to start all of this off, let's talk a little bit about how to create a custom Fey.
Okay.
And for those of you who've been watching our podcast for a little bit, the first thing to think of is, how do you create a custom monster? It's very similar to creating any custom monster. There's a couple of ways you can go with it. What's the first way?
So, especially for DMs and storytellers and what have you that maybe don't have a lot of experience, one of the easiest ways to create a custom creature is to find a creature that has the stats and skills you want and literally just reskin it like a video game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just borrow some of the attributes, it could be the entire creature, just call it a different thing.
Yeah, you could take the entire stat block. I ran an aquatic world once where there were little squidlings. They were 100% kobolds from top to bottom.
Yeah.
And they were just squid people instead.
Mm-hmm. There are not sewer bears in D&D. There should be sewer bears. I have sewer bears in my campaign. It has nothing to do with Fae, but I've literally taken a stat block from a specific type of bear, which I'm not saying because some of your players listen. They haven't fought it yet.
Right.
But I've taken it from a bear stat. Could be a cave bear. Could be a dire bear, folks. Could be something worse.
Could be a polar bear.
Could be a polar bear. Could be a grizzly. But it is now a sewer bear. How easy is that? Very easy.
Yeah.
And you can just do that. Now, there are, of course, other options as well. so we can adapt and reskin monsters. What's involved in that, Matt?
In the same way that you reskin a monster, in this way you take a lot of the stats that are available,
But not all.
of them, and then you make some minor changes. You tweak abilities, or you borrow the bones of the creature and then wrap what you need around that.
And Fae are good for that, especially because a lot of them have similar abilities oftentimes because they're tied to nature and stuff like that, or emotions. And so you could take, borrow a couple here, borrow a couple there, or maybe we'll use a red cap as an example, right? So a red cap is a feisty little guy, right?
That's a kind way of saying an absolute murder creature.
Just a lovable little scamp, right? He's got his hat. He's doing a little dance. Hello, my baby. And then he just axes you, drags your corpse off, and dips his hat
in it so it can stay red.
Yeah. Dan, you got to re-dye it, man. But you could take that kind of murderous little scamp and I just want to hug him, man. I know he'd kill me if they existed.
It's because you like mean cats, and they're literally the same creature.
That is, oh my God, yes. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to use a fairy cat, and we're going to use the same stat block as a red cap, but we're going to make it look like a cat.
Okay.
And I see it as kind of like a small version of the Alice in Wonderland cat.
The Cheshire?
Yeah. So we give it maybe some invisibility, feats or abilities. And the rest of it is maybe red cap.
Yeah.
Even dipping its claws to paw into the pool of blood as it, eviscerates you.
I can see it. I'm with it.
It's a great mental image in my set. So that's one way that you can also reskin for custom Fae. Additionally, you can research old fairy tales and try to work out how to make those mechanics. Or you can take and adapt from an older edition of D&D or whatever game. I mean, you could borrow from other games and maybe try to make a monster from that into this as well.
100%.
So what are some things they might want to look for that?
You could look at Changeling the Dreaming.
There's nothing but Fae in Changeling.
Right? I mean...
And we recommend the Goblins in Changeling the Dreaming because they're awesome. You want to make a pact? Little Goblin deal? Yeah.
I think that's a good resource. Some of the older editions of D&D have some good resources. I know Forgotten Realms had something that had to do with the crossroads and being able to travel the Feyways and things like that. You could definitely look into that.
You could look up some Grimm's fairy tales. You could look up some old lore.
You can
pretty much anywhere in Europe has a bunch of old fairy lore.
Indeed. And there are things that fit the bill of Fae all around the world.
Yeah.
They're not called fairies because it's a European term, but there are things that have those kind of flavors and those kind of concepts that you could use, reskin them, or use them respectfully, right? Don't be those people.
Yeah, don't just rip off stuff.
But if you're going to use things specifically from other cultures, make sure you understand what those things are and what they mean.
Do it with respect. Do it well. Have fun with it.
Yep.
And then finally, you can make something up completely.
Yep.
Oh, you don't want to do something, you don't want to research something, or maybe you just want to come up with your own idea.
Build that whole building.
Do it.
Just
do it. It's not hard. We'll show you how. It's easy stuff. You can do this too. You can make stuff up completely on the fly. We do it all the time. It's called this podcast.
Yes.
You think we have a plan? Absolutely not. All right. So now this may be the most difficult thing to do because you're having to come up with stats and balance it for the game and stuff like that. And as we've always said, when you make a custom monster or anything custom, you generally mix and match, right? It's like a salad bar. You pick and choose the best parts of things. You make some stuff up on the fly, and then you kind of sew it all together in this wet bag of, mischievousness, and you call it a monster or a fairy or whatever it happens to be.
Right. Monstrous fairy.
A monstrous fairy. An undead fairy. Think about that.
I was thinking an aberrant fae. But
an aberrant fae would be awesome. A Feywild touched by the far realm. Yeah.
Or a beholder that got trapped in the Feywild for too long and started to change.
A rainbow beholder.
A rain beholder?
A rain beholder. I just see like this manic, dilated eye, like he's done too much LSD, and he's all multicolored and stuff.
Iridescent irises.
He's got like little fairy wings all over his bulbous sphere. They're all just kind of flapping.
He doesn't have scales. He's got bark.
Yeah, we're doing that. We're totally doing that.
And now you know why I want to be able to draw.
10 rays of Tasha's hideous laughter. That's all it is.
No.
That's right. One of them has to be disintegrate.
And one of them has to be Irresistible Dance.
Very true. Yes. I love that. And he just sings Men Without Hats all day long. Go look that up, folks. All right. Let's talk a little about some custom options for Fae.
All right.
First off, as we always say, and this is the number one rule every single time, descriptions, descriptions, descriptions.
Yeah. Descriptions build the creature.
Yes.
One of the things you've got to consider for custom Fae is the environment. A lot of Fae are spirits that are particular to specific locations, like a stream or mountains or the hearth of a home. Right? You got your dryads, your Oreads, which are the mountain versions of dryads.
The Fireads, the Adderalls, I don't know.
No,
what are
Naiads.
Naiads.
Those would be streams or rivers.
Okay.
Yeah. So
now this will often be the first consideration to temper the personality and abilities of the Fae. So think of it like if you've got kind of a basic idea in your head, think about where they're going to be. You want to be and you don't have to just use nature. It could be anything. You want to be a Fae of a city, be a Fae of a nuclear reactor, or a particular Fae that exists because it is an emotion of something. Like we mentioned love and hate and stuff like that. Totally cool, right? You could be a Fae of disgust. What that look like? Who knows? Think of the description. Think of the environment. What?
Oh, I love the idea of a Fae of disgust. Like
It looks like a high school teenager.
You're having this conversation, right? And somebody says something that is so far out of the way that you just lose your mind for a second. And this tiny, fat, cherub-like creature, but with dragonfly wings, pops out, has giant ham hands, right?
Yeah.
Slaps the crap out of the person because that's how disgusted you are. You literally summon one with your anger and disgust.
It has to remove, it's got big white gloves, and it has to remove one of the gloves, and it slaps you, then it puts the glove back on. How dare you, sir? Psh.
But they have to be enormous, right? Like he's got to have like big ham hands.
Yeah, they have to be bigger than the rest of the creatures. It's like, it's nothing but hands and a cherub body that flies.
Exactly.
I love this idea. Yeah, it's a Fae of disgust.
Hey, that one's free. We didn't even have that one planned.
You're welcome. We just made that up right now, guys. How cool is that? Going into the second consideration, right? We've got a description idea, like a general idea. We've got an environment or an emotion.
Sure.
Now we go, what do they look like?
Right. Because you can have a base description, but until you know what their environment is, you can't really pin it down. Their environment should show up in their description. If you want something with wings, but it's an ocean Fae, maybe they've got flying fish wings.
Or dolphin fins.
Sure.
You can have that because they're a result of that. Fae of mountain streams might have incorporeality, or maybe the translucent qualities of water. Maybe they flow like water. Or because it's a mountain stream, maybe they're smooth, like maybe they're made of like smooth stones or something like that, or their skin is textured like stone,
like the rounded pebbles. That would
sure.
be
that'd be nice,
neat.
right? Yeah. And we've got another example as well. So the Fae of a city could be what?
Might look like the Great Trash Heap.
Yeah, nah. Could be a small aged bum, right? That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah. Could look like a golem made out of red Solo cups. Just like a little animated pile.
Yes, I totally see it, like a Solo cup golem. Got a couple of wrappers, some McDonald's wrappers or something like that.
As the body just like holding the bits together.
Sure, yeah, that'd be totally cool. Okay, we've got an environment, we've got a basic description, and kind kind of a little bit of like an emotion or something tied to it. Another good thing to consider is the intent, or we could even start building a theme around the Fey creature at this point. The first thing to ask is, are they malicious? Are they beneficial?
Or do they care?
Or do they care? Are they amoral? Who knows, right? It could be both. It really could literally be at the time of day.
Right. Or it could be something that is beneficial but malicious, right?
Mhm.
It is chaotic good to the Dexter side of things.
They could be good for you now, but that same benefit might be horrible
Right.
later on. You could also ask yourself, are they tied to particular power plays in the Feywild? So, for example, the Seelie versus Unseelie court, or what are they, the
Summer, winter.
Yeah. Or the ones that do the equinox. There's a lot of different courts out there. Go look some up.
Look all of them up. Know everything.
Know them all, yes.
Don't do that. That's the rest of your life. That is literally a doctorate. What are their motivations? What are their goals? They're going to play a key place here.
So an example of that might be, do they feed off of an emotion like love? Are they interested in spreading chaos or joy? Or
Do they just want to watch the whole world burn?
some creatures just want to see the world burn, Bruce. Yeah, so definitely think about that. Another thing to consider, how do they bargain? They always bargain.
Keep in mind that while they may not be able to give warlock packs or anything like that, Fae that aren't very powerful can still make a deal, will still make deals. Maybe you're just trading a favor for a favor, or maybe you're trading just access to a cantrip for a date, like a boon, right? For a specific set of actions that they want you to do.
Could just be a favor. Hey, when I go gambling, I need you to be there to roll the dice for me one time. And they need to get this time. And when I say go, do it. You know, like one specific thing.
Yep.
Or I need you to slip this in somebody's drink. That's it. That's all it is.
Yep. We're just trying to poison this one little noble.
We just want to kill this one guy. It's not going to be a big deal at all. You're invisible anyway. Just go in there, slip it in his drink. It'd be great.
They drop the little thing in there and the little bubbles made out of skulls pop up.
Oh, yeah. It dissolves the spoon like in the cartoons.
Exactly.
Yeah, we saw the same cartoons. So that is a very interesting thing to consider. And finally, you've got your environment, you've got your description, kind of a theme or intent, motivations built around that. Now you have enough to start attributing powers and abilities to your Fae.
100%.
Easy to do.
Yeah.
So what are some of those powers, do you think? Like, what would be some good examples?
One of the things you can consider is a lot of times their powers are going to be nature related.
That makes sense. They're tied very intently to nature or emotions.
So you could give them access to specific druid cantrips or spells or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of these creatures, that's not going to make sense for, right? Redcaps, for example. They are low rage beasties. You can make them extra strong with the ability to get stronger or the ability to get larger or...
So they Hulk out.
Exactly.
I love that.
That makes more sense for them than Druidcraft.
Yes. Yeah, because you're not expecting it to go, make a tree grow.
Right.
They're expecting
Here's a flower.
Yeah. So they're expected, they push up daisies, certainly, but not in the way that you would like.
Right. They cause other people to push up daisies.
Fair enough. Yeah, that works. Again, we mentioned generally nature related for a lot of them, but they don't necessarily have to be. Look at some of the other. You could use arcane or divine abilities and spells. Again, mix and match. Remember, role-playing games are your salad bar.
Right. I think for Fae, some of the things you can consider is, yes, you can consider the entire Druid line of concepts. 100%. Also, take a look at all of the illusion spells.
Yeah.
All of the enchantment charm spells, which they're also very well known for. I think if you use those three, you've got a really strong option. But for that Fae that wants to watch it all burn, maybe you would go with fire themes.
Throw a little wizard fireball or something like that, searing ray and so forth. Be creative. Use whatever's available according to the description, the environment, and of course, the intent or emotion associated. Easy peasy, right?
100.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Archfey. Matt, what are Archfey and why do we care?
Archfey were beings who gained nearly deific levels of power, and they established a position of preeminence among Fey kind.
Basically, the gods or goddesses of the Feywild.
Correct.
They're domain level powers.
Yes, and some of them can grant spells as if deities as well.
Mm-hmm. And each Archfey had a unique set of appearances, set of abilities. Many of them controlled, as we mentioned, specific domains. So Titania, for example, is a good example.
Sure. Oberon as well.
Yes.
Some of them were simply powerful examples of races, and not just Fey races. Could be any race, because anything that's trapped in the Feywild long enough starts to become Fey.
I mean, at one point, weren't the elven deities sort of Archfey?
They were the precursors to Archfey.
Okay.
Corellin didn't even have a physical form that he was locked into to begin with. And depending on which timeline, whatever you read, he still doesn't. There's the one that people depict him as, but it's not necessarily true.
Okay. Speaking of deities as well, some of them are regarded or were regarded as deities. And so, as you mentioned, they did grant divine abilities. These would be great for a warlock pact, I also might mention.
Yes.
There's a pact of the Archfey already.
Yeah.
And this is where we're getting this from.
Archfey could be contacted by willing mortals to form a warlock pact. They can also choose to contact a mortal.
They might be amused at your actions, and instead of you seeking out an Archfey, they might have, yanked you into the Feywild and said, hey, let's make a deal.
They could literally... So a pact is how a mortal gets powers from their patron. There's literally no rules that says a patron can't reach down and give you powers of their own accord.
Yeah, because the bargain goes both ways, which is something to consider when you're making some warlocks.
I charge you nothing. You're a warlock.
I do this on my own amusement.
Yep.
Congratulations. Go forth. Chaos.
Exactly.
That would be hilarious. I don't want this. You don't have a
Too
choice.
bad.
Too bad. You nodded. You thought for a second that it would be amusing too.
Yeah.
And now it'll amuse the world.
You thought the thought, I wish I could, and now you can.
And now you can, yeah. You got what you wish for. One of the things that's interesting about Archfey is that there's no specific race or power set or even a path to power to be an Archfey. It could be a goblin. It could be a little sprite, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tiny little sprite that is the most powerful creature in existence. And it totally is the thing.
You can literally be a squirrel.
A squirrel Archfey.
Yes.
Oh my God. It would just
'Cause
rip roofs off of houses everywhere.
Because remember, in the Feywild, the animals are intelligent.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
So you could literally have squirrel Archfey.
Something to consider right there, folks. So what we're basically saying is go wild with the description. So a good example is that. So let's imagine this imp.
Yeah.
Now an imp's a demon.
Yep.
He got trapped in the Feywild. And so let's just say over a couple of centuries, he started to get changed by the Feywild, much like how the hells and heavens corrupt the essence of creatures. I say corrupt or change change the essence of creatures. Same thing can happen in the Feywild.
I love it. I love the concept. I love the mental visual of a Fey imp. Like, how would you draw that? Like, what would you use for?
His bat wings get swapped out for bird wings or butterfly wings. Gets a little insectoid, perhaps. Maybe he's got like some bug eyes or something like that. That'd be kind of cool.
His horns become like a rhinoceros beetle
Yeah, that'd be neat. Or
Chucks
even
or something.
maybe just one horn like a unicorn.
Yeah.
Maybe he gets he starts getting all pearlescent. Got some iridescent skin or something like that. Still malicious as but
Yeah, he's definitely unseelie.
but he's definitely down with some amusements.
Yeah.
He's just a mean bastard. So think of that as an example about taking a fae, turning it into an archfey of any type that you want, or just molding a fae just from other creature stock. Now, if you wanted to build an archfey, what's the best way to go about that?
You take a goal, you attach an emotion to it,
Mm-hmm.
you pick a creature, literally any creature.
Be anything. Bird, cat, trussum. A trussum lord would be nice.
Oh, yeah. That'd be a lot of fun.
That's a flying cat, folks.
And then you give it powers based around all three of those, right? Based around the goal, based around the emotion, and around the base creature. Fae are known to be mercurial creatures, so their goals could change over the course of a campaign or the course of time. And in fact,
They should.
They could, or they should. But PCs could sway what that course is if they're persuasive or helpful enough.
Which is something that we also recommend.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. Built like any other fae. The only difference is the scale of that.
Yeah. When you're developing the powers, you should probably turn the volume up a good bit.
So kind of like Elder Good or Elder Evil, this is kind of Elder Whimsical. Elder Mercurial.
Yep.
And that's the direction you go. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about some fae, and in fact, we'll give you guys some custom examples of fae we've created, but we'll be right back.
After these messages.
If there are any topics you would like us to cover, goods or services you would like us to review, or if you would like to sponsor an episode, we would love for you to contact us at info@goblinscorner.com. See you there. And we're back.
Welcome back.
So we're talking custom fae on this St. Paddy's Day weekend.
Excellent.
And we've got a couple of ways to create fae. We went into, the mix and match or cut and paste or just creating it from whole cloth, talking about emotions, assigning a theme, or of course descriptions to your fae. And what better segue to get into that than
Actually, just jumping right in. The first two we're going to talk about.
and they've been in D&D already, but we want them brought back because they need to be brought back. And those two creatures are the Wilder
Mm-hmm.
and the Hipsel.
Right.
Now, Matt, what is a Wilder and what is a Hipsel?
The Wilder's gone by a couple of different names. I think I just settled on Wilder. It was the Kilcory in 3.5, I think, or something in that. It is the Feywild's version of a Genasi or a Tiefling, Aasimar, what have you.
Fey-touched.
Right.
We think we should bring back the Fey-touched because they're cool.
And frankly, it's ridiculous that it isn't around, considering the Fey's reputation for fooling around with mortals and mortals' reputation for fooling around with Fey.
Yeah. Now, neither of these are custom Fey, but we feel that it wouldn't be very hard to recreate them. What's a Hipsel, by the way? And we'll get into what these things could be.
The Hipsel is either a halfling or elf, top half, and a deer, lower half. It is like a centaur, but
with
small.
With a small
And with
centaur.
deer.
Yeah,
Yep.
deer centaur, right? Halfling or whatnot. They're cool.
Yeah.
And that's it. Easy Fey to create. They don't have them. We should go ahead and bring them back. Let's talk a little about the Wilder first. What's a good set of abilities we could give a Wilder? Now, we're thinking Genasi for Feywild.
Right.
What do they always have?
Dark
Tens-
vision.
Dark vision.
You got to have dark
Give
vision.
them some dark vision. And then I would say, because there's Feywild, mischievous, a little mercurial, give them
Mhm.
some illusionary abilities, right? So minor illusion
Right.
or friends. Friends is
Sure.
always a good one. That's just cantrip.
Maybe fairy fire
Mm-hmm.
or invisibility once per day. And sort of like the Fey-touched feet, right? You get cantrip, you get a spell. Makes perfect sense.
So if you have that, easy to bring in, and you could always adapt that to particular Fae if you wanted to have multiple versions of a Wilder. So imagine a Wilder that was maybe based off of, we just use the quartz, right? Seelie versus unseelie. They would have slightly different cantrips. They might have the same thing. They might both have minor illusion, for example, because that's useful for malicious intent or beneficial.
Right.
But maybe instead of friends, they had harm. Well, not harm, but like cause wounds. Well, they cause harm.
That's a hell of a jump you got there, guy.
It's some Wilder, man. Let me tell you. It's Van Wilder.
Oh, that's...
Hit you with the van. Yeah,
and
boom.
you said you were going to trade those jokes out.
I haven't made my pact yet, so... it's, yeah, I don't know. You but style that accordingly.
You could give them minor illusion or friends.
Mm-hmm.
You could give them fairy fire or invisibility once per day, which, and the way that those are done, you also would get it as a known or memorized spell.
Yeah, so we're talking like
use a spell.
Cantrips and first level abilities, basically, like you would get if you were just any other race or something in D&D.
Right.
Now, I would also say you could tailor it according to the courts, so Seelie versus Unseelie, or even specific types of Fae.
Sure.
Here's a good example. So what are the ones of streams? The Nereids?
Naiads.
Naiads? Yeah. It could have something like create water once a day or something like that. That'd be an easy thing. Or water breathing might, perhaps.
For the cantrip, shape water.
Shape water would
so
be
that you could
excellent.
draw pictures and
Sure.
I mean, that would be very on brand for them.
Yeah, and a dryad, which is associated with trees and such, druidcraft.
Sure. Makes perfect sense.
Maybe some kind of plant growth spell or something like that.
Or you could do the shape earth cantrip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy to do. So let's bring back some Wilder. Now, for the Hipsil,
I feel like you just go with the more physical side.
so go with the centaur style, but just shorten it a bit.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
You give them a move of 40, because even though they're small, they are four-legged.
Yeah, they're spry. They got to get out of the woods, man.
Yeah.
Get run down by wolves.
You don't believe me? Chase a cat.
Very true. Give them dark vision anyway.
Right? Because they're Fae.
Hmm?
And everything from every plane but the prime gets dark vision, it seems.
Only humans don't get dark vision.
Right. Small size, we mentioned that. But powerful build.
Because a deer.
Because they're a centaur. Yeah.
Deer you up, man.
They will wreck your whole day.
You should also give them the ability to ignore hardness for when attacking a vehicle.
I can see that. Yeah.
Deer run into cars.
Mm-hmm. What is that? Give them the siege effect, so they do double damage against objects.
Compulsion to jump across a road when a cart's nearby. The modern day vehicle accident.
They freeze when they take radiant damage.
Yes. Yeah. Headlights come on. Very good. Yeah. So those are two that we want to bring back. And even though they're not custom, here's a way to put them back into the game. Now, another thing you could do going on the Hipsil, if you didn't want to make them deer, you could also use another small animal. Badgers, for example.
Yeah.
Dwarf, half badger, centaur, badger dwarves. Think about that.
Gnomes.
There we go. Yeah, gnomes would be great. What could you do with dwarves? Warthogs.
Rams.
Rams? I could see that.
Because mountain goats.
Sure. Yeah, that'll work. What about elves?
I couldn't think of anything nice for a second. I just...
We'll leave that to your imagination. Okay. Now, we do have some custom ones now. And ironically, independently of each other, we both came up for our first two Fae. They're both goblins.
Yes.
And we really don't make goblins on the Goblins Corner, so I thought this was the perfect time to whip these bad boys out. And Matt, the first one we have from you is the Wilder Goblin. Now tell me about what Wilder Goblins are.
In real fairy tales, in the real world, right? In some of them, goblins were fey creatures. In some stories, they were cast out, and some of them, they simply found their way here and got stuck or got lost. And having been here too long, they slowly lost their ties to Fae. For Wilder goblins, though, as the story that I'm making for it. They remember their old ties, and they keep to places where the Feywild is closest to the world, in hopes of either crossing back over for revenge or to return home, depending on why they weren't there anymore. Either way, staying close to the edges of the wild has allowed them to maintain their connection to Fey.
So their environment would be the edge of the Feywild or places of deep nature and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What do they look like?
They're similar in appearance to standard goblins, with the exception that some of them have naturally occurring leaf patterns on their skin.
Leafy goblins. Camo goblins?
Kinda, yeah.
Cool.
And it could be either other colors, or it could be hues of the same color, or you could do it like an Eladrin and have it change by the season.
That would be neat.
That would be pretty cool. They often have unusual eye colors. Very rarely, one will be born with dragonfly or beetle wings. And this is cause for celebration because it usually means that the veil is thinning between where they are and the fairy, because that's a very Fey thing to have happen.
Yeah, the Feywild's going to burst through.
And it oftentimes means they're going to get their chance to come home.
Cool. What are some suggested abilities for a wilder goblin?
They have access to 2 druid cantrips
Okay.
and 1 first level spell that they can use twice a day. Druid spell that they can use twice a day.
Okay, so 2 cantrips, first level spell.
Right. And in the way of most of 5e works, if you've got a class that allows you spell casting, it's a spell known or a spell memorized,
Sure.
like they always do.
Okay. Very cool. Any particular spells that you have in mind? Illusion spells, perhaps?
You could definitely do that. For druid firsts, I like Entangle.
Entangle would be good for goblins.
I like it.
They entangle you and they club you over the head and eat you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's goblins, right?
Yep.
Cool. So those are the wilder goblins.
But for you,
My head was in a completely different place.
so I see. Give me your take. What are your goblins, man?
Now, keep in mind, when you create custom Fey, it's based off of environment. And
Right.
so mine are called dice goblins because they're based in gambling dens, card tables, horse races, Las Vegas,
Sure.
any place that people are winning and losing in great amounts, betting stuff. And so these Fey originate there. They just spring up out of the blue.
Sure.
So these are tiny gray creatures which have large heads in the shape of various polyhedrons. Some are 20-sided, some are 4-sided
Little pyramid heads.
little pyramid dice goblins, right? Whatever dice you're playing, right? Luminous eyes of varying colors, generally yellow, red, or green, and slim, cartoonish bodies. So I want you to imagine these cartoonish, thin little stick figure goblins running about, and they're super tiny. They're like this big, right? They're like
Right.
only a couple inches. And they're running off, and they've got these gigantic, bulbous heads that are made of dice,
Sure.
luminous, glowing eyes, kind of neon colored, I'm thinking, much like Vegas signs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dice goblins can be found wherever games of chance are played, fortune telling occurs, events are bet on, or anywhere Lady Luck influences the tides of fate.
Okay. What would their abilities be like?
Pretty much everything that's related to chance. I've got a couple of ideas. Randomly influencing games of chance would be the first ability I would give them,
Okay.
which could be advantage or disadvantage on a roll, or a plus or minus to a roll, or even influence the roll directly by using a little mage hand here and there.
And you could also do things like if your characters are actually playing poker,
Mhm.
right? Literally draw a card and hand it to one of the players.
It's interesting that you've mentioned that because the next ability I was thinking about giving them was teleport object, but only gambling paraphernalia.
Nice.
So yeah, you draw a card and it pops up into your hand.
Very cool. I like it.
And that's pretty much it. Those are dice goblins.
Sounds like fun. So let's talk about this next one here.
Ah, yes. The Frat Folk.
Okay.
Frat Folk are pretty much exactly what you think they are. They are tied to an emotion, which is disorderliness or drunkenness, specifically in a fraternity or sorority. And that is their environment. They live in frat houses. Yeah. An offshoot of satire, frat folk frequent social clubs, dining establishments, aristocratic societies, and of course, colleges.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at first glance, these appear to be typical students or members of whatever establishment they are inhabiting, but upon closer examination, one can see the otherworldly signs. Eyes just a little too large and expressive, skin slightly shinier than normal, maybe 2 white teeth, and of course, the curved horns are on their heads.
Sure.
They're students with curved horns, basically.
Right.
Frat folk encourage revelry and drunken disorderliness, and they seem to gain sustenance from that as well, in addition to eating all of the free pizza and beer at the frat house.
Sure. I like it. So, hit me with their abilities. What do these folks do?
We've got an aura of intoxication, which they can activate or deactivate at will, because remember, they feed off of these emotions, the emotions of boisterousness and partying and stuff like that.
Sure.
They're not necessarily evil or bad or good. They want to get people rambunctious.
Right.
You get them drunk. Let's do something stupid. They have cure poison because you got to sober somebody up.
Right. Because if they die of alcohol poisoning, they can't get drunk tomorrow.
Correct.
And the party stops when somebody dies,
Mhm.
usually.
They have an ability called Hold My Beer, which is suggestion when drinking.
Nice.
So they can only use suggestion when people are drinking. If they're not drinking, they can't do that.
Sure.
And then I would say a lesser guise, and it's specifically hazing rituals.
Okay.
So if it's under the auspice of, oh, look, it's a hazing ritual, then it's lesser guise. Get them to do whatever.
All right.
But mostly they just like to party.
Sure.
Like to socialize, have a good time. A little Greek sweater that they wear.
I like the idea that they're all in the same frat or sorority, but they're constantly showing up at other frat and sorority houses.
They have their own fraternity or sorority. That would be hilarious. Oh, man. We're going to put them in Strixhaven now.
Nice. But yeah, they're like, nobody knows where the frat house is. Nobody knows, right? They just show up.
It's just right down the road. It's right over there. Yeah, you miss it every time. What do you mean you've never been there? You've been there twice. What, really? Yeah, you were drunk at the time.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. And then everyone just kind of plays it off. A little suggestion here or there, and they slip in.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But they just inhabit the college in general, but they're always wearing their own frat houses clothes.
I love everything about that. How delightful is that? Now, I've got a final Fae, and then you've got 2 Archfey that you've created.
Yes. So your final Fae here, they're called Subway Slinkers?
Subway Slinkers.
Okay.
And given the name, they don't live in sandwiches. They live underground. So underground cities or subways, train stations, access tunnels, any large city or even a sewer network would work for a subway slinker.
Okay.
You might just call them slinkers if there's not a subway in your game world.
Right.
The description goes, out of the corner of your eye, you see a wizened old man sifting through trash in the bin near the on-ramp of the train. As he finishes, he sets small pieces of wood gathered in a nearby corner of the station. Suddenly, the largest bug you've ever seen dashes out of a darkened corner, tips a jaunty hat at the old man, fills his cup full of coins, and dashes away in a pile of dirt. So, get this old guy. He's just setting food out in a circle, and this big-ass roach or bug comes out, but he's wearing like a jaunty hat. Or maybe he's wearing some Nikes, comes out, puts some coins in the old man, dashes off, and kind of bamfs like Pigpen from Charlie Brown, and a little puff of smoke leaves. Subway slinkers look very much like roaches, beetles, and other vermin, but upright, so they're walking upright, and they're not on all fours, or all sixes, and generally wearing some sort of outrageous clothing. Now, the clothing is not just for show. It is also part of the Fey creature, and those that manage to steal the bit of clothing can command the subway slinker.
Oh.
Yeah, so little story options there. Much like the, the Selkie.
Right.
You wear the Selkie, what is it, the shawl that the Selkie has?
I believe they can't harm you, but it is probably one of those things that might change from story to story.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, in terms of subway slinkers protect the homeless. They aid those lost in large cities, like kids, for example, might be lost,
Sure.
and maintain the wilds of the concrete jungle. Many a vagabond has left a crumb or two out for the subway slinker only to find his cup filled with coins, a helping person suddenly attending his medical needs, or a room for the night. So they're good, right? They may look like hideous roaches.
But they're like brownies for the city.
Yes.
If you treat them well, you are treated well.
And that's very similar to the abilities and things that I have.
Okay, so what do we have for the abilities?
First one would be create food and water. Because if you're in the city,
Yeah.
helping people out would be the first thing to do. I was thinking something like no direction would be a nice ability as well for a fae. If you're to help those that are lost. Oh, I know where I am, so I can tell you how to get someplace else.
Sure.
And then maybe once per week, find the path to help someone get someplace.
Yeah.
And maybe stuff like minor, like cure wounds would be useful.
Sure.
And of course, because they're giant bugs and you don't tend to want to see those in the cities, blur. So you just see like a blur moving and you're like, oh, must have been a rat.
Woohoo.
Yeah. I got that reference. No one else did, probably.
Mosey will get it.
Mosey will get it. Thank you, Mosey. Okay, you have 2 Archfey to round this out.
I do.
And I can't wait. Again, I know where you're coming from with this. The first Archfey is delightful. Archfey Mogdo the Scintillating.
Yes.
Oh my God. I love everything about this. Tell me about Mogdo.
So, Mogdo is an ankylosaur.
Of course it is. Hashtag Team Ankylosaurus.
That's right. Well, you know, I've said over the past year and a half that eventually I was going to make an ankylosaur archfey. Here
Now
we go.
he has.
Yeah, that's right. Mogdo is an ankylosaur that wandered into the Fae eons ago. Time in the wilds has altered their appearance such that their scales and bony plating are a deep green with slightly holographic shine.
Yeah, glowing ankylosaur.
Right. You know the holographic images that are just like almost fractal?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That, but instead of being on a silver background, it's on a dark green background.
Love it.
They possess both holy warrior and druidic style abilities at high levels of power because they're an archfey.
Sure.
In D&D terms, this would equate to multiple levels of Oath of the Ancients Paladin and Circle of the Moon Druid. How many levels of each would be, depending on what you consider nearly godlike for your campaign?
Let's go whoop some ass, whatever happens. Love it. What's Mogdo's deal?
Keep in mind, ankylosaurs are herbivores.
They're peaceful dinosaurs.
He just wants to live in peace, and he appreciates others that have that view. They will grant pacts to people who strive to bring peace and to promote living in harmony with nature.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, Mogdo's not above fun and games on occasion and will absolutely answer harmless pranks.
Harmless pranks.
I mean, you know. He answers in kind, although it's fairly rare that they initiate them.
Just this little
Fairly
scamp
rare.
of a dinosaur that's just, rocking about.
Little scamp.
Little scamp. Little 12-ton scamp of a dinosaur. Dips its tailbone into some blood. I mean, it depends on what the prank, I suppose, is.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's an interesting patron to have, too, for an archfey. Think about that. A warlock that is whose patron is Mogdo.
Yeah. Can you
It's going to be
imagine?
well armored, let me tell you that.
That's for the dwarven warlock out there.
Yes, the dwarven druidic warlock. That would be perfect. And it should totally have shape change or turn into an ankylosaur.
Yeah. Dwarlock.
A dwarlock. You're welcome, folks. It's beautiful. Okay, you've got a final fae here. We've got an archfey, Lady Ladora Awebringer.
Yes.
Tell me about Lady Ladora.
Also known as the Starlit Lady. Lady Ladora was an angelic being, but her chaotic tendencies led her to the Feywild, where she found herself a little more at home. While she hasn't really fallen, she's not truly at home in the upper planes. Her domain is a beautiful glade, sometimes peaceful and sometimes just filled with delightful revelry. It's almost always a clear night where only the stars, glowing flora, and small fairy lights provide enough light by which to get around while never seeming to ruin the dim beauty of the place.
Sounds very idyllic.
Once she was in charge of the glorious beauty that is the clear moonless night skies to remind mortals to look up from their toil and witness the majesty of the heavens. Right? Solars and planetars, they're literally in charge of cosmic things.
And so as an Archfey, she kind of took charge of those cosmic revelries.
Well, she started off as a celestial who came down and just kind of was like, yeah, since we're here.
I already know this job, so I'm just going
Exactly.
to continue to do this. That makes sense.
So she brought that charge with her and occasionally can be found assisting those in danger of being lost to fear of the often dangerous Feywild nights. So, she'll just wander around the woods at night being like, no, child, it is dangerous here. Come with me. She usually makes pacts with poets, artists, and anxious people that know well the beauty of the late night sky. She can make both celestial and fey pacts.
That's cool. I like that she makes pacts with anxious people, too. That's just kind of a ridiculous thing to make a pact with.
Who's up at 3 o'clock in the morning?
The anxious, or the highly caffeinated. Or you.
Poets, artists, and anxious people.
Fair enough. There you go. I love that. I'm still team Ankylosaur on Mogdo.
I get it.
I love this one. I think this is an awesome thing. I kind of see the lady as a bookish, like she's got like the little round glasses. Kind of looks like a fey librarian.
So I actually based her off of a conversation with somebody on Twitter.
I know who you're talking
I
about.
bet you do.
I bet it is. We're not going to say who.
Nope.
I love this even more.
Because I haven't told her yet, so this will be a surprise to her.
This is going to be delightful. So there you have it. Some custom Fey for you to enjoy and use in your campaign. Some ways to bring back some old Fey from previous editions. Ways to create your own Fey. And some Archfey to use. Again, Team Ankylosaur, folks. There you have it right there, right?
I love a disco ball Ankylosaur.
Oh, hell yeah. Big old disco ball at the end of his tail.
Oh, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking the holographic scales.
Oh,
but
man,
yeah.
I'm thinking disco ball at the end of his tail. Just little Bee Gees playing in the background.
Never Bee Gees. It's never the Bee Gees playing in the
Wonderful,
background.
wonderful. Questions and comments? Write to us. info@goblinscorner.com, or you can reach me, Eric@goblinscorner.com, or
Me, Matt at goblinscorner.com.
we're on all the things. Matt, what are some things we're on?
Well, we're on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and Twitch.
As Goblins Corner,
We're also on Instagram.
as the Goblins Corner. Do you like our show? We hope so. Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player, YouTube, and Twitch.
You could click on the 5 stars and give us reviews on iTunes, Podchaser, YouTube. You can do all the YouTube things, right? If you like the show, If you hit the bell to get notifications and subscribe, we would very much appreciate it. It feeds the hungry algorithm.
Gets more people out so they can see all this wonderful stuff, and they can also be Team Ankylosaur.
Indeed.
That's all the time we have for tonight. Once again, my name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
We'll see you next time.
Good night, folks. The Goblins Corner has been written and produced by Eric Holden and Matt Staple.
D20 did our music.
And this has been a Subterranean production.
Later.